everyone, and welcome to the Crown Report. My name is Brittany, and on this program, we go over some of the major royal news stories of the week. We have state visits between Spain and the Netherlands and Belgium and Luxembourg. We also have Prince William returning to royal duties after his wife, Princess Catherine, was diagnosed with cancer and is undergoing treatment. We also have the sad burning of the Brsen over in Copenhagen, which is really considered now probably their Notre Dame moment. So lots of things to go over here in royal news. So if you guys are ready, let's go ahead and get started. Don't forget to give this podcast a follow. We would love to have you back. So the main story we are going to talk about this week is the state visit between the Netherlands and Spain. So the Spanish royals, King Felipe and Queen Letizia of Spain, flew over to the Netherlands to undergo a state visit. And I just thought it'd be a good opportunity to explain what state visits are, because I feel like there's a lot of, perhaps you could say, confusion or wondering what these events really entail, because obviously royals don't dictate policy. So why is it so important for them to continue to have these state visits where the royals talk, but you could argue perhaps maybe the governments aren't really somewhat that involved, because this is really almost a effort of soft diplomacy. And that's what really royals are. Royals are soft diplomats. They exude this soft power because they have this authority coming from centuries where they have often been ruling their country. Yes, but obviously they don't really have a ton of power now, but they obviously have this element of authority and this element of heritage and culture. And that's really a lot of what state visits are reflecting this timeless heritage between these two countries. In fact, during the speeches between the different monarchs during the state banquet, I believe it was King Willem-Alexander of the Netherlands, who made a bit of a joke about some of the more contentious times between the two countries over the centuries, because we forget oftentimes that Europe is very, very old. And some of these monarchies go back centuries upon centuries. And so there's been a lot of conflict between these various nations. So these men really represent their ancestors who have fought against each other really for centuries and have had great deals in peace times as well. And so state visits are an opportunity to develop these personal relationships between the monarchs and also professional ones as well between their different staffs and the government representatives themselves, because usually they have representatives that come on these state visits. Obviously, it's a little different if it is a president of a country coming to visit rather than another royal, because obviously the president would meet with the prime minister. They would have impact on policy and different sorts of things, foreign relationships, all that. But when it comes to royals, obviously there is a melding of the two households. People from these different sides talk, and they are representatives, they are heads of state. So they don't have the power to initiate policy, but they can also help smooth relationships between the two countries at the same time. So that's incredibly important as well. And this visit was particularly important because there is a great personal relationship between these two families, because actually King Willem-Alexander and Queen Maxima actually met in Seville, Spain. They were there for an annual festival that happens in the springtime in April, and they met there 25 years ago this month. So obviously that has been a very, very special relationship. And in fact, it wasn't too long ago that the king and queen brought their three daughters to that festival in Spain. And Queen Maxima is actually from Argentina. So she is a Latina. And so Spanish is her native language. So she had to learn Dutch. And her and her husband, their common language when they met was English. And this was actually the common language spoken between the different monarchs during this visit. Although I'm not sure, Alexander may speak some Spanish. I'm going to guess maybe he's not fluent because he didn't seem to use it even when they were together. And it was obviously a way, because many Dutch people do speak English, that was a way to have this common language between the various groups. But I just thought it was great there. And so if you're wondering who is who, we obviously have on the far left side here, we have Catherine Amalia, the Princess of Orange, the future queen. Queen Maxima is next to her. In the middle is their middle daughter, Princess Alexia, their youngest daughter, Princess Ariane, and then behind them is obviously King William-Alexander. I say Wilhelm, some people said it's just William. It's Willem. So Willem is how he spells his name. So it's interesting to see that there's the common names throughout Europe. So let's say Philip. So Felipe, King of Spain, spells his Felipe. Philippe of Belgium spells his Phippe. And then obviously Philip in the UK spells his without the extra P and E at the end. So it's just sort of funny to see the same names just spelled various different ways. And so as we look through this whole event, you'll notice because we'll play the state banquet speeches and everything. One of the things that I feel like keeps constantly coming up the more I listen to these speeches is the importance of the relationship between the Europeans themselves. This seems to be something that they are very much focused on. We even see this with Charles and Camilla when they went to Germany and France for their first state visit. Obviously, they had to separate the two because there were massive protests going on in France during their initial scheduled time. But to go to Germany and France, two of the countries that you could say historically have been enemies of the United Kingdom, and go to them first, again, reflects this growing need for a tighter European community. This has obviously been instigated by the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And so they are very much thinking about that, considering that. And so this is very much on the forefront of their minds. And we forget often how small Europe is. These countries share large borders, and they are much closer, you could say, to the conflict than you might think in some ways. When I was in Poland in 2022, obviously the war was going on in Ukraine, not technically too far away. I was in Krakow, which is sort of in the south of the country. Nothing really happened, but you did see the impact of the war because somebody was explaining to me that even though they are in Poland, there were more and more advertisements going up in Ukrainian. So you could see how the influx of Ukrainians into Poland was actually impacting the local community and even how people advertise services and goods. So these are all very important. In the United States, we have such a big country. We just don't seem to understand some of the tightness and the closeness between these nations in Europe. So this visit was intended to highlight all those different things, the close relationship and between the families, Europe in general, the governments, all these sorts of things. And so you'll see a lot of the conversations here are in English. And so I pulled in some of the clips here. So I'm excited to share these with you because I have to give a huge shout out to Casa Real. So this is the social media profile of the Spanish, because the Spanish actually almost lost their monarchy again because the former King Juan Carlos, the father of King Felipe, he had been in so many different scandals and financial. There were a lot of improprieties. He went on a safari with his mistress during the recession, which did not go over well in Spain, which was hit really, really hard by the recession. So even though he was very popular, he had to deal with this huge impact. And so King Felipe has really come in and sort of kind of started to try and save what they could of the Spanish monarchy. So you almost feel this effort, I feel like, within the Spanish to be even more, you could say, not really aggressive, but more ambitious in some of their PR campaigns and everything, because they're working so hard just to make sure that they can keep it. And so Casa Real videoed every single engagement and brought on clips. So I just thought that was awesome because I was like, yes, thank you. Because sometimes it's hard, especially for the foreign royals, to sometimes find videos of things. I just sometimes I can't find them. And so this was wonderful because you could go back through and pretty much see the whole visit. So let's begin with the opening ceremony, which is held in the Dom in central Amsterdam. There are their majesties, the king. So Philippe is 6'5", so he is the one. And we have Maxima here in the red and Queen Letizia of Spain in the green. And so they are there in the main square. I keep thinking that says Madame Tussauds on that building, and I just think that's good. Usually they play each other's national anthems. You see the flag of Spain, the flag of the Netherlands. See this crowd out there as well. And so they do eventually go around and they do sort of an inspecting of the troops. So there's King Felipe on the right and King Willem-Alexander on the left. And you'll notice the gentlemen, a lot of them are wearing orange because obviously the Princess of Orange and the Kingdom of Orange plays a great role in Dutch history. So you'll notice even in big sporting events and everything, they all wear orange. It's kind of funny. Because obviously their flag is red, white, and blue. But they really go with the orange. So here they're meeting with a group of I believe it's native Spaniards who are there because obviously there's a lot of inter-country travel and work visas and students and everything between them. So it's funny, it looked really sunny this moment, but they came out later, just they had a reception after this, and so King Felipe and Queen Letizia came out and they laid a memorial at the memorial there in Amsterdam, and it was like pouring. So they got a wonderful little bit here of sunshine, but then the rains came out. But I didn't pull everything, so we don't really have that to show you. But just to give you an idea, things and weather can change it quite quickly, apparently. So next, the Kings went to the Cruyff Foundation to meet with young sports enthusiasts who are part of this foundation for their sports day. You can hear him talking English here.
The director of the Cruyff Foundation. We work together with also with our foundation.
The organization is a Dutch-Spanish one that has a mission to give children with disabilities and children in disadvantaged neighborhoods the opportunity to play sports and games. And so this came from the Dutch schedule here. You see the King. And just to give you, King Felipe is 6'5". The other guy standing next to him must be 6'6", 6'7". He's very tall. And again, this is all about building community, building relationships between the two countries. So this was kind of cute. Two of them deciding who would kick the ball first. Oh, there we go. in their nice dress shoes. I was hoping to see them play more soccer. I thought that would be entertaining, but apparently not. There's their final group shot. There's lots of excitement. It looked like a lovely engagement. And when it came to the evening event, we have the thing that pretty much everybody knows about state visits, because when we see Catherine in a tiara, or Queen Camilla or Queen Elizabeth, when she was still with us, everybody would get very, very excited. And of course, the state visit was no exception. And we have some really spectacular jewels on display here. And the one I really want to point out to you guys right now is Queen Maxima of the Netherlands there over on the far right-hand side in the light blue dress. She is wearing a tiara called the Stuart tiara. It is one that's been within the royal household for over 100 years. But I want you to pay particular attention to the diamond on top when you can see it, because that is actually a light blue diamond from the Stuart period. It belonged to King William and Queen Mary of England. That is how old that diamond is. That's almost 400 years old. It was cut as 39.75 carats. And Queen Letizia is wearing a scroll tiara. I've heard a couple different names for it, so I won't commit to one in particular, but it is gorgeous. It has pearls and diamonds. It's lovely. We have Princess Catherine Amalia wearing the ruby peacock, but it's really the Stuart here that's the most important, because it is the most impressive, not only within the Dutch collection, but I would argue the most impressive diamond within any tiara in Europe. Even though, yes, the imperial state crown in Britain has a massive diamond on it. Of course it does. It has the Cullinan too, one of the great stars of Africa. But when it comes to tiaras, because that's a crown, when it comes to tiaras, Maxima has the most impressive. So here we have the reception. They do sort of the sit-down photography session where all the reporters can get their pictures. And so we have everybody here. And we also have Margaret on the far left-hand side and former Queen Beatrix on the far right side standing up. And so we have this reception here where they go and they greet everybody. And what's interesting here, you can notice, is that Queen Letizia is sitting down. So she's suffering from Morton's neuron disease, which makes it really challenging for her to stand for long periods of time. She gets a lot of pain between, I think it's her third and fourth toe, if I remember correctly. And so she's now wearing kitten heels. You'll notice that a lot. She's been known to wear really tall loafers. She wears tall shoes because her husband's tall, so she kind of has to compete. But she has changed to much lower heels and everything because of this particular condition. It's making her quite uncomfortable. And apparently, when she was in Denmark doing the state visit, she decided to stand for this greeting or reception line. And she ended up, I guess, being in a lot of pain later. And so this time she said, you know what? I'm not going to do that. And so she sat for this, and she actually was seated at the table already when the rest of the monarchs came in. So again, another change in order to accommodate her condition there. So let's just continue enjoying and watching the glitter. Don't you just, especially when the light catches tiaras at a certain angle, there's a close-up of her tiara, and then there's Maxima's. You can't quite see the Stuart tiara on top, but yes, the rest of the diamonds are also incredibly massive in that particular piece. So it's a pear-shaped diamond. I wondered this couple came up a lot when I saw it in videos, so I wondered if they are famous or something. If somebody knows that this particular couple is notable, please let me know. Okay, so there's Maxima. We can't quite see it yet. It'll come into oh, you can see it a little bit up top there. Sorry, you can see the blue. It's a light blue, so it's not very stark, but you can definitely see that it is a blue color. There is Queen Letizia again in her tiara, which is gorgeous. I love it when they catch lights and they glitter. This also goes to show, too, that some of the rumors regarding Meghan not having a real tiara at her wedding are false because, yes, you do get the rainbow effect of the tiaras when they glitter. So I know some people have said, oh, you can't, if you get rainbows, then that means the diamonds aren't real. No, that's just not right. If you watch any of these videos, you'll notice you definitely get a diamond effect from the jewels. Obviously, that was Catherine Amalia we just saw there, listening in on Queen Letizia again here. Because depending on who's covering the video, sometimes they don't focus on some of the other royals, and I'm like, wait, okay, again, you can see the blue on top of the Stuart. You just got to point that out because it is just so amazing. It's such a historic piece of jewelry. And then we have Catherine Amalia. Again, she's also wearing the peacock necklace. And so it is a set together. It looks very similar, but they are, in fact, different. And this was her first state visit to attend. And this was her first state banquet. She's worn tiaras before, but this is the first time that she has actually been officially at a state function and doing a state banquet. So this was a very big deal, but obviously there's a close relationship between Spain and the Netherlands, which we will get to here in a minute with King William-Alexander's speech. All right, so here we have the speech of King Will. So why don't you go ahead and take a listen to His Majesty's speech here? His Majesty from the Netherlands spoke first in order to officially welcome their guests.
Your Majesties, welcome. The Queen and I are delighted to have you as our guests. We've known each other for such a long time. We have close personal ties and see each other regularly. Spain has a special place in our hearts. First of all, because it was in your country that our life together began. We were at the Feria de Abril in Sevilla 25 years ago. Sparks began to fly, the rest is history. Not just for us, but also for our eldest daughter, the Princess of Orange. Last year, circumstances required her to live in Madrid. From there, she was able to continue her studies at the University of Amsterdam. This was made possible.
So yes, so since Catherine Amalia is a future queen, apparently there were some threats against her life. So even though she had started university, the University of Amsterdam, they actually had to pull her out. And so apparently she has been living pretty much the last year in Spain. Spanish is one of her primary languages. Obviously, it's the native tongue of her mother, so I'm sure she is very much fluent in it. Her mother is from Argentina. So that was just an interesting confirmation because I had heard that, but I had not heard that she was actually particularly in Spain. We had gotten some pictures of her in Spain. And so I thought maybe she was just taking like a quick vacation or something like that. But it turns out she was pretty much living in Spain.
By the kind efforts of many of your compatriots and yourselves. A touching demonstration of friendship at a difficult time. I'd like to express my heartfelt thanks to you.
And you'll have to notice too, keep watching King Philippe's face at one point because he does laugh at when Willem-Alexander talks a bit about their shared and sometimes contentious history as countries.
You and to everyone else who helped arrange this. Spain and the Netherlands are branches of the same European tree. The King of Spain plays a prominent role. But I won't go into the historical context. Let's just say, all's well that ends well.
You just saw him.
We are allies, driven by the same ideals, values, and convictions. We stand for freedom, democracy, and human rights, and we're prepared to defend them, but also because we need a strong and resilient union for security, prosperity, and well-being of all European citizens in the future. I'm proud of the cooperation that has developed between our police forces and justice systems. This is making a clear difference in the fight against organized crime. We cherish our friendship with you and with the Spanish people. And let me say, from the bottom of my heart, gracias. Viva España.
Toda viva España. So I just got to close in on Catherine Amalia again. I did borrow some of this video from Rick Evers, who did a great job getting some video from it, because obviously I can't be there in the Netherlands. I thought about going to cover this event, and I'm kind of bummed I didn't, just because we did get the full Stewart. I don't know how much press credentialed access I would get, because I'm still sort of a new outlet. And so, but anyways, I just thought that was incredible. But let's listen to King Philippe's speech now. His is a little bit longer. I actually cut a little bit more from his, so you actually have some different variations here. And this again is from Casa Real. So huge kudos to Casa Real for doing such a great job getting so much video. They didn't get Willem-Alexander's speech, but they get this one. So go ahead and take a listen.
Your Majesty, I would like to express Queen Letitia's and my deepest gratitude for your kind invitation, together with Queen Maxima, to visit the Kingdom of the Netherlands. Allow me to add the joy we feel for the special presence of other members of the royal family. In particular, your daughter, Her Royal Highness Amalia, Princess of Orange. Our families indeed are very close and share so many moments in recent history, both on a personal nature and, of course, on a more official one. As we do with our goals and efforts in favor of stability, continuity, political neutrality, and the common good of our people, now so closely bound by our great bilateral exchanges and our common membership of the EU and NATO. We hope that this visit will bear witness to the excellent state of our bilateral relations, based on solid historical, personal, cultural, economic, and social ties. We can trace some of those bonds back to the 16th century, such as Charles of Antwerp's Foundation, the first of its kind created in Spain, devoted in its origin to the assistance of Flemish travelers. We recall that the first illustrated edition of Don Quixote, the first and most widely published novel in the world, appeared in the Netherlands in 1657. We then had the opportunity to celebrate the 375th anniversary of our diplomatic relations and the launch of new cooperation projects for the production of renewable and green energies. The world needs a strong and united Europe to defend and promote these purposes. The future of the next generations depends on it. It requires us to stand united and firm in our principles and values, together with our allies, in the face of the most recent challenges, such as the Russian war of aggression against Ukraine. So do our parliamentary monarchies, as we go together towards that future, hand in hand with two young women of their generation, Princess Amalia and Princess Leonor, deeply committed to their nation and their people. 25 years ago, around this particular time of the year, you both admittedly met in Spain during Seville's famous Feria de Abril. We therefore toast to that personal and emotional connection to our country, so it may always remain and flourish as it has since then.
All the glasses. It's all very, very professional there. And again, I just wanted to show you guys this because, again, we have sort of, and I feel like this is somewhat driven by Harry and Meghan and their narrative, which is, I think, confused a lot of people, is that they think royals are frivolous. They think royals are celebrities, that they are just pretty much like any other starlet out there or upcoming star, something like that. But no, royals have a very, very important role. They are heads of state. They serve a very important function. And that's why you do need members who are all reflecting that in many ways, because yes, you represent yourself in some ways, but you represent something much larger and something oftentimes very, very historic. And so you do need members who support that effort and that endeavor. And so I just wanted to share with you guys that, just because in part it's just fun to hear the speeches that are in English, because that doesn't always happen. So the next day, the men did a couple of things, but I just wanted to highlight one of the events that the ladies did, because obviously I can't show you guys everything, but there was a Amsterdam Spanish Film Festival. And that was attended by Queen Maxima and Queen Letizia of Spain. And so you see them greeting people there. And according to what I've read about it, they're both obviously the ladies native Spanish speakers, and this is the 10th annual Amsterdam Spanish Film Festival. The event allows broader audiences to discover and engage with carefully honed selection of cinema from Spain and Spanish-speaking Latin America. A great event for the women, given that Letizia is Spanish and Maxima is Latina. Obviously, they're in a theater here. There was a discussion, and then the ladies went around and met some more people here, because royalty is oftentimes very much, you could call it maybe a bit mundane in some ways, because it's a lot of small talk. And this was interesting because obviously Letizia and this man seemed to know each other, because that greeting would not happen between a royal and somebody they really didn't know. So obviously they were familiar with each other. So I just love that they were able to do this event together, which really celebrated their shared history. And at the end, usually it happens because the king and queen did such a great job hosting, is that the favor was returned. And so let's watch this go ahead and greeting. And you can see Catherine Amalia, because all these royals right here, they are the same rank. Catherine Amalia is not, so she gives a curtsy to Queen Letizia. And then she goes over and greets King Felipe and does the same to him. Nice deep curtsy there. And so they were at the Straat, Amsterdam's Museum of Street Art and Graffiti. So they did a little bit of tour of the facility. And I wish Catherine Amalia had taken off her coat, because we can't really see what she was wearing. But Queen Letizia had this very much this stylistic wrap dress there, which was very interesting. And Queen Maxima also had her own little variation of that as well, with the big bow on the side. From one of my favorite designers, who also designed her gown the night before. He's one of my absolute favorites for Maxima. And so on this little thing, all the monarchs ended up signing it. So King Felipe and Queen Letizia are on the top over there on the left side. And then Willem-Alexander, Maxima, and Catherine Amalia are on the right. So you'll actually see the full picture in each of them having signed. Ah. Ooh, interesting. Hold on. Let's wait. Let's go back a second. I didn't realize Catherine Amalia is left-handed. Let's see. Was anybody else left-handed in that? So she signed with left. Maxima signed with right. Signed with right. He goes by Alex. Letizia right. Looks like King Philippe also right. I only did his briefly. I had to cut some of this. So there's actually longer video of these things, but I had to cut them. So I want to get a copyright strike. But I find that really interesting. I didn't realize. So actually, Prince William is also left-handed. So we have two future monarchs who are both left-handed. Isn't that interesting? So interesting. Okay, sorry. Totally didn't catch that the first time around. So we actually do see at some point here the signed thing. Amalia's, I feel like, is very easy to suss out. That is Maxima, but I really don't feel like that says Maxima. Didn't really catch that one. Philippe, I catch. The other ones, I'm like, eh. And so the R obviously stands for Regina or Rex. So Regina or Rex is a Latin term for monarch. So Elizabeth II obviously was Elizabeth R, Elizabeth Regina. So King Felipe would obviously be Philippe Rex. So anyways, just interesting there to note. And so there is everybody heading out.
Can we take a picture out here?
So again, guys, I hope you guys really enjoyed just having a look-see at what a state visit is all about. And yes, there are some exciting things. Obviously, the men did earlier that day. It was really over 2 days. There was a reception the day before just for the Spanish, but there were a couple of engagements in between. But I just thought I'd highlight a couple that I thought might be fun or just fun to look at. And just to give you guys a greater appreciation of the gorgeous Stuart, because I feel like we do need, in case you really missed the blue here. Here's Queen Maxima, and you can really, again, see the blue in the tiara up top. Isn't that amazing? That diamond there was cut 400 years ago. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that just so incredibly crazy? All the other diamonds, too, are obviously absolutely massive. Maxima is also known as well for taking off various elements of this tiara. Apparently, it is very flexible in terms of what you can do with it. So she'll have sort of a lower base form, and then she'll add the bigger diamonds on top. She'll take some of them off, wear them as earrings. So she has made this tiara very much her own, and I look forward to seeing her wearing it more because I love it. I was actually not expecting to see this tiara again until there was a rumored of a state visit between the UK and the Netherlands. And the Netherlands had gone to the UK in 2018. So this would be the UK coming to the Netherlands. And I knew Maxim would probably bring it out then because, again, obviously the tiara and the diamond has a connection to the Stuart dynasty of the UK. So, guys, I hope you really, really enjoyed that. There was also a state visit here between Belgium and Luxembourg. So Luxembourg is more of a principality. They have grand dukes and duchesses. So I just thought I'd share with you a little bit of video of that event. This one is a little harder. We didn't get quite as much, and it is all in France. I think it's all in French. Luxembourg speaks Luxembourgish. That is one of their languages, which is kind of a mix, I guess, I think between French and Dutch. So in Belgium, you'll notice if you follow their social medias, all their posts, they do it once in French and once in Dutch. So they do that because obviously there are two sides of the country. And so there is a lot of kind of warring fractions. So actually the Belgian monarchy plays a great role between the Flemish and the French sides of the country. And so they play a very prominent role there. There is Grand Duchess Maria Theresa. That is Queen Matilda of the Belgians in the bright red there. And then they went and visited this particular artwork. And so you have there, as they're getting ready to take up the picture, to show you who everybody is here real quick. So we have Matilda on the far left, Grand Duke Henri on next to her, and then King Felipe of the Belgians, and then Grand Duchess Maria Theresa on the far right. And if you didn't know, Grand Duchess Maria Theresa, who's in the green there, is sort of considered somewhat the Meghan Markle of Luxembourg because she has perhaps in some ways not the greatest reputation. So I realize this is done twice. So I'm not sure. Somehow that got done twice. So and this is towards the end of the visit here. And I think they're signing some sort of guest book. So this is, again, what royals do. They are this soft element of power. They bring countries together, even small and large ones. So this one was fun, and we'll do probably a TR Tuesday video about it at some point. But we have super exciting news. It's because there is going to be a state visit that starts tomorrow between Finland and Sweden. Finland and Sweden are obviously close neighbors. They are in the Nordic countries, as they call them. I know some people criticize, but when I was looking through materials for the King's Golden Jubilee in Sweden last year, they were called the Nordic countries. So that's like Finnish, Iceland, and I don't think there's any other added. But those two countries, in addition to the traditional Scandinavian countries, Norway, Denmark, and Sweden. So we do have this upcoming state visit because there's a new Finnish president. So we will have 2 days of state visits there in Sweden. And then 2 weeks after that, Sweden will host the King and Queen of Denmark. And that is their first state visit. Again, signifying the close relationships between the Scandinavian countries, who are basically essentially cousins. And so the King and Queen of Denmark, so that's King Frederick and Queen Mary, will visit Sweden and then later Norway. And then they will visit the Faroe Islands, which are part of Denmark, and eventually Greenland as well. And so next we have Prince William, who is returning to royal duties after taking a bit of a break. It was part of the Easter break, and also after Catherine had revealed to the world that she was undergoing treatments for cancer. We don't know what type of cancer, but she is recovering. They should be home in Windsor now. They went up to Norfolk for the Easter holidays. And so this was William's first return back to royal engagements. And he went on to visit Surplus to Kitchen, which aims to bridge the gap between food waste and food poverty locally. So let's take a watch a little bit of this video here. This is a very sweet moment. A woman wanted to not only shake his hand, but to give him some cards. So let's watch this here at the beginning. So she wanted to shake his hand, and she gave him a deep curtsy, which is very sweet because it might seem, especially to American eyes, to be archaic to do a curtsy or something like that, but it is a sign of respect. So and she gets underneath. She was hoping to give them apparently to one of his staff members, but got to give it to him. And so some people are criticizing him for not giving as much attention or talking about what his father and his wife are going through. But I do want to say, obviously, Prince William is human. And I understand that maybe in that moment with the cameras there, he didn't want to get into perhaps you could say even a deep conversation, even a surface one about what's going on within his family, because it is challenging and it's not something he really wanted to discuss at that particular moment. And so he does, though, go and ask her more about her day and what she does. So watch. You can't really hear, honestly, too much. And so I'll just share a bit about what they do. So they try to make sure that food is used in a way that benefits everyone, especially if there's excess. So they do this in 4 ways. They redistribute the food that would have gone to waste to local food banks, schools, care homes, shelters, clubs, religious organizations, and more. The second way is a surplus cafe, where a chef creates food that is sold to the public that is surplus food, the surplus shop where they sell food that would have otherwise gone to waste. And 4, they have events so that the food that they have been donated to or something like that can be used for events for those who want it. Prince William also brought some surplus food from his own home at Adelaide Cottage. And there was also a bit here where he pointed out spaghetti hoops, which are sort of like, I guess, spaghettios or something. And when they pointed out, they're like, oh, you know what this is? He's like, I've got children. So I love that because it does show that he is connected to the public and he's connected to his kids, I think, which is really important. He probably spends some time and helps them make their spaghettios if they need them. And the Prince of Wales also provided 2 forwards to 2 guides published to support families of armed services members who have committed suicide. And he also attended the memorial service for Major Mike Sadler, one of the wartime SAS originals. They were identified as the 21 men who made it back from the SAS's first disastrous mission during World War II in 1941. He died at the age of 103. So if you're wondering, I thought that was very cool. Lovely to see him do that. I also noticed too, it looked like William had lost a little bit of weight. But I think all the stress going on definitely has impacted him. So our next royal to discuss here is one that definitely does not get that much attention, and that is the Duke of Kent, who is 88. And I felt sorry for watching him in this video. It looked like he was struggling quite a bit to walk. But this is really cool because the Duke retired from his position as a colonel of the Scots Guard. So he's the cousin of Queen Elizabeth, and he had been serving as this position for 50 years. And the retired military officer was incredibly proud to have served this military unit. So his last official event was Black Sunday, the regiment's annual day of remembrance for its fallen servicemen and their families. And I think the Duke of Kent here, given his elderly age and obviously his increasing challenges with mobility, I think he's a great example of really the purpose of service, which is not to serve yourself, it's to serve others. I love that we are able to see him doing this engagement. Prince Edward, the Duke of Edinburgh, will be taking over this role, but I love that the Duke exemplifies again service, which is duty above personal. And I think it's lovely to see him reflecting that, especially in light of some of what we've seen from our younger royals recently. So the Duke of Kent definitely still has that feeling of service. And I imagine he will be continuing to serve until he is pretty much unable to do so, very much implementing his cousin, Queen Elizabeth II. And over in Denmark, we have King Frederik fulfilling some of his duties as head of state as he welcomes some new ambassadors to the royal residence. And they are from Slovakia, the Republic of Guinea, and Armenia. And they went to Emlienburg Palace. So it is great to see him doing that. Although I will say overall, I feel like we haven't seen Frederik very much. So that is kind of interesting. Obviously, he and his wife will be on a state visit to Sweden and Norway next month, and then later the Faroe Islands and Greenland. His wife, Queen Mary, also met with her counterpart from Ukraine, the First Lady Olena Zelensky, at Emlienburg Palace as well. And so Olena was there to attend the Danish government's Ukrainian Investment Forum, which seeks to identify companies interested in assisting with the rebuilding of Ukraine once the war ends. I thought this was very interesting because obviously, again, it's still a reflection of sort of the pressing issue of Ukraine on the rest of Europe. This is something they feel, I think, intensely. And they're obviously trying to make sure that the country can get back on their feet post-conflict. And I got to say, too, the background of this room, very odd and sort of interesting. I'd love to know the story. And we did have a very, very sad day recently in Copenhagen with the fire that began in the Brsen. So this is a very famous old stock exchange building in Denmark, and it caught on fire. And it is an old wooden building originally built in the 1600s. And the famous spire of the building sadly collapsed, much like what happened in Paris with the Notre Dame. So this building was undergoing renovation and sadly caught fire. Its famous spire, which featured intertwined dragons, also caught fire and eventually collapsed within the flames. Bystanders and employees of the Danish Chambers of Commerce, which is currently housed within that building, worked together to save some of the historic paintings located within the building. Construction of the Brsen was completed in 1640. You can see one of the paintings there, another one there, another piece of treasure there. And I would say if I was in Copenhagen, I would be right there too, trying to save the stuff. And so the building was completed in 1640 during the reign of King Christian IV. And it is one of the most iconic buildings in Copenhagen. It's near Christiansborg Palace, which is where the Dutch parliament is located. It's also not technically too far away from the palace, the Amalienborg Palace complex where the royals live today. So that was the spire, obviously, that fell and collapsed. And so you can see them desperately trying to put out that fire. It was quite intensive. This is a later, I think, in the day, or maybe even the next day, pictures of the building from the BBC. And as I said, because the roofs are copper, it's actually keeping the fire somewhat intense in there. So very, very sad to see this happen. Obviously, it happened as well in Windsor Castle when it was undergoing renovations and it caught fire and some things were lost. And so this is obviously very sad in terms of a historic perspective. And I think it also raises a lot of interesting questions about how these renovations are being done, especially that we've had a couple of really, really historic, iconic buildings in two major cities in Europe, obviously the Notre Dame de Paris and Paris. And then we also have had the Brsen building in Copenhagen. And they actually happened within about 1 day and 5 years of each other. And so it raises a lot of concerns, I think, of how they are renovating these buildings, because you think we would have gotten better at protecting them over the time rather than worse. That these happen within 5 years of each other, I think, raises alarm bells, I think, that people should consider about what exactly we are doing and who we are letting touch and renovate these very, very historic buildings. Are they licensed? Are they doing the things that they need to do, should do to protect these buildings? I think that's very, very important questions to consider. So real quickly, Norway has some exciting news, is that the king is finally returning back to duties after having surgery to put in a pacemaker, but the king is scaling back his engagements as well. And so it says, this is from the Norwegian Royal Court, His Majesty the King is back at work today, Monday, the 22nd of April. In connection with the king resuming his work, some changes will be made to his program going forward. From when the king is back at work today, he will resume his constitutional duties as head of state, conduct meetings and audiences at the palace, as well as official visits around Norway. However, the king will make adjustments to his program in the future due to his age. This will entail a permanent reduction in the number and scope of activities in which the king participates. Practical arrangements will also be made in the implementation of his official activity. The king is happy to be back and resume his work. So this is very interesting. I feel like this is very a la Queen Elizabeth II, where as time has gone on and as health continues to decline, they scale things back. And so those will mean Crown Prince Haakon and Crown Princess Mette-Marit will undertake more engagements, although Crown Princess Mette-Marit also has a chronic health condition as well called chronic pulmonary fibrosis, which is a lifelong condition, which means the lungs get very scarred. And so sometimes it can make it difficult to breathe. And so that will be definitely a challenge that she has to deal with. And obviously the king, as well, as he has this pacemaker, you can tell on engagements and stuff, he has a very hard time getting around. When I was in Sweden last year for the King's Golden Jubilee, the King of Norway was actually sitting on the balcony. You could tell they had brought out a seat for him. And so he very much has mobility issues. So this will be interesting to see how this does going forward. Obviously, you had a different reaction with Queen Margrethe of Denmark, who decided to abdicate as her health continued to decline. So we may see more of this in the future, but maybe not. And so we have some sad royal news to report as well. And this is from the Greek royal court. And I know some people say, well, the Greeks aren't real royals, but they don't have a throne, but technically they are still the prince and princess of Greece. And so this is from Prince Nicholas and Princess Tatiana, who have announced that after 14 years of marriage, they have chosen to amicably dissolve their union. Love how people are getting very clever with it's like what a conscious uncoupling, as Gwyneth Paltrow called it. It's like y'all can just say you're gonna get divorced, guys. You know, sugarcoating it, I think, only goes so far. Anyways, it says this decision was reached with great care and mutual respect, reflecting the depth of their appreciation for one another and the moments they have shared. Their future interactions will continue to be guided by the same principles of respect and understanding as they transition into a relationship rooted in a strong friendship. They will continue to live and build their lives in Greece, a place they both call home. Family will always support them. We warmly thank you for your understanding and respecting their privacy during this time. So this was from the private office of the Greek royal family. They're starting to get a bit more involved in their country after having been removed. And so just to give you a view of who we're talking about here, because I've always loved Princess Tatiana's style, and I did notice she was not at the memorial service for His Majesty King Constantine of Greece, which happened in the UK not too long ago. I was a bit surprised by that, but here she is. And then here is Prince Nicholas. And yes, unfortunately, they are divorced. They were married for 14 years, though they did not have any children. So obviously that will not factor into their divorce proceedings, but it will be interesting to see where things go from here. And as we wind down this episode of the Crown Report, let's talk about some royal birthdays. We have Princess Eleanor of Belgium. She is the youngest child of King Felipe and Queen Matilda. She has just turned 16. Queen Margrethe of Denmark has turned 84. And then we have this very cute picture. So they had their birthdays within a day of each other. They are cousins. So this is Grand Duke Henri on the right there and King Philippe on the left. So Grand Duke Henri turned 69 and Philippe turned 64. And so, guys, thank you so much for watching this episode of the Crown Report. I hope you really enjoyed it, found some interesting things, and we will continue to grow and build this amazing platform and channel. So, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I shall see you soon. Bye.